Fox News Podcasts presents the Bret Baier Podcast with Fox News chief political anchor Bret Baier.
Well, NASA wants to send astronauts to the surface of the moon by 2027. The Artemis 2 mission around the moon scheduled for next April. Joining us is the acting administrator of NASA. He's also the transportation secretary, Duffy. Mr. Secretary, thanks for being here.
Bret, good to be with you. Thanks for having me.
You know, there's a notable tone shift in that video and how you're talking about it. It seems like another space race and acknowledging that China is on the move.
I think it's important to be honest, right? And so China's making great leaps in their space program. And it's important to note that their civil and military space program, there's no difference. They're all the same. And as you know, the U.S. comes in peace, right? We want our partners around the world to come together, and we want to win the second space race to the moon. But we know that China wants to get there before us. We're not going to let it happen.
So next April, in 2026, is the next mission, and then 27, and is the hope to get to Mars in the early 30s?
So first off, the mission is hopefully we're going to beat that April date. I'm not going to put too much pressure on us, but we hope we can do first part of the year. That is going to be a mission, a 4-man crew that's going to go out and around the moon. Artemis 3 is going to be when we land back on the moon. We're going to stay for a longer period of time, anywhere from 8 to 12 days on the moon. The longest time in the past was 3 days. And again, we're going to start sending payloads to the moon to start building our base camp. And then from there, again, we want to get in the early 30s to Mars. And this is critical. What we learn on the space station, what we learn on the mission to the moon is going to be critical to make sure we can sustain life. It's an 8+ month mission to Mars, and then you got to stay there, and then you got to come back. So again, it's critical lessons learned to make sure we can accomplish all those goals.
You know, it doesn't come without criticism, obviously, and there's a lot flying around on Capitol Hill. Former astronaut, Senator from Arizona, Mark Kelly, wrote an op-ed in the New York Times. He said this: NASA is reportedly losing up to 4,000 employees, including some of its most experienced and specialized workers, because Mr. Trump is trying to take a sledgehammer to the civilian workforce. It has a stand-in administrator in Duffy, who has a second job running the Department of Transportation. And in May, the Trump administration proposed a 24% cut to NASA's budget, the largest single-year cut in history, saying all of that is a bad thing if you're trying to get to all of these markers.
Yeah, so I get along well with Mark Kelly. I think he buys into the space exploration mission. But under President Trump's budget, what the senator failed to mention was the president actually put more money into space exploration. He's doubling down on it. And we do have a role in earth sciences. We played a critical role in the flooding in Texas and wildfires and farming, and we're still going to do that. But we are the only agency that explores beyond the stars. And again, Mark Kelly agrees with that. And again, we're not a jobs program. We are an exploration agency. We have enough money to accomplish that mission. And again, we've seen this all throughout government. Again, if we can do more with less, we're going to.
We saw Secretary of State Rubio joke on Labor Day about his 4 jobs.
For me personally, this is the most meaningful Labor Day of my life as someone with 4 jobs. And so
you're gaining on him. How is that all going?
You know, our DOT is humming, our air traffic control, our modernization of the airspace, that's going well. And so I do have some room to get this mission focused. But again, I think it needed direction, Bret. I think the American people thought that, you know, the NASA mission was fully focused on exploration. And what I've seen, and I've tried to tell the American people, is we have lost that focus. But again, this is, if you look at government, Bret, one of the greatest agencies that we have is NASA. People get excited about NASA. They get excited about exploration. Around the world, they love NASA. And again, I'm here to tell you, we are going back to the moon, and we're going to go to Mars.
We have a lot of viewers who love space stories. We've done a lot of space, a series of stories, so please keep us in the loop. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Bret.
The display of Chinese might ongoing in real time shows the need for the United States to demonstrate strength and resolve.
I thought it was a beautiful ceremony. I thought it was very, very impressive. But I understood the reason they were doing it, and they were hoping I was watching, and I was watching. My relationship with all of them is very good. We're going to find out how good it is over the next week or two.
Well, it is a different dynamic, and you can see the headlines around the world showing that the president welcoming the Polish president to the White House, talking about possibly more troops in the region with Russia, and then Putin and Kim Jong-un and President Xi showing this sign of strength at this military parade is how the BBC describes it. This as there is movement in Ukraine. As you look at the map, Vladimir Putin is saying that Russian forces are amassing along the border, and he is saying that Russia will achieve all aims militarily if Ukraine does not agree to a deal. So with that as the backdrop, let's bring in our panel. Fox News chief political analyst Brit Hume, Susan Page, Washington bureau chief at USA Today, and Josh Kraushaar, Fox News radio political analyst. Brit, it is a shift, and it does feel like something is shifting on the world stage.
Well, that was an impressive collection of tyrants and dictators and third world leaders. The question really is how closely they're all knitted together now. And the interesting entity to watch, it seems to me, is India. India, you know, back during the Cold War, had a long history of snuggling up to the old Soviet Union, and it gave American policymakers fits. I remember a guy I was working for at one time, Jack Anderson, won a Pulitzer Prize for disclosing that the U.S. had tilted toward Pakistan during the India-Pakistan War back in the 70s. So there's a long history here. But Modi, the leader of India, has been pretty close to President Trump and gotten along well with him. It's a valued ally, but now we've socked these tariffs on them, and it remains to be seen how closely they'll snuggle up to the Russians and the Chinese now.
Yeah, speaking of that, Susan, you know, the threat of additional tariffs. There is a bipartisan bill, Lindsey Graham, Blumenthal, to have secondary sanctions or tariffs against countries that do business with Russia and Russian oil. The president seems to be getting frustrated with what he's seeing. Take a listen. He's asked about President Putin.
You've expressed many times your frustration and disappointment with Putin, but there's no action since you took your office.
How do you know there's no action? Would you say that putting secondary sanctions on India, the largest purchaser outside of China, they're almost equal, would you say there was no action? That cost hundreds of billions of dollars to Russia.
And he's considering more, Susan.
Yes, but he's not gotten what he promised a couple weeks ago, which was a bilateral meeting with Putin and Zelensky, and then a trilateral meeting that would include him, and then a peace deal on the way. And it is not the first time that we've seen Putin kind of seem to play Trump for time, and yet we wait for President Trump to actually do some direct action against Russia to kind of implement the frustration that he must be feeling about that. It's been, I think, perplexing. Definitely concerns in India about the imposition of those tariffs. That's a little indirect for an affront that seems pretty direct to me from Putin to Trump.
You know, Josh, there is this hot mic moment that was a little surreal. I want to play a piece of it. Take a listen.
In the past, people rarely lived longer than 70 years. But today, they say that at 70, you are still a child.
Human organs can be continuously transplanted. The longer you live, the younger you become, and can even achieve immortality.
I mean, this is like Legion of Doom stuff, Josh. It's transplanting younger organs to achieve more immortality is quite something.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a creepy soundbite, but look, it underscores the fact that these are totalitarian leaders who think that they will, you know, be leaders of their country forever. They have no sense of political mortality because they plan on holding power forever. And I do think it was a little bit unsettling to see what really is sort of, to use the parlance of George W. Bush, a new axis of evil, trying to put together an alliance with China, Russia, North Korea. I think Brit is absolutely right that Modi's appearance with the Chinese leader is a very unsettling development as well, because we want India on our side. They've been, in the first Trump term, India was a close United States ally. Now it seems like with these tariffs, it's gravitating a little bit against the West. So, like, these are important decisions for Trump in the weeks ahead, especially especially with Russia. We had a lot of talk, but we haven't seen a lot of action. I'm going to be watching closely. Bret, you mentioned the Lindsey Graham sanctions bill. That is going to be the one stick that Trump can use, and it, I think, would be important for him to send a strong message if Putin doesn't come to the diplomatic table.
Yeah, and Brit, President Trump is going to talk to President Zelensky, and one would think that there was going to have to be another step here, or he's going to have to say something different about what the next action is.
You know, he's had a strange affinity, it seems to me, for a long time to Vladimir Putin. One imagines that he's come off of that a bit in recent times because I think he feels like he's been jerked around. And the step to put the secondary tariffs on India was a manifestation he's willing to do something. The question now is how much more. Obviously, he's prepared to send weapons with Europe paying the bill to Ukraine, which is something Ukraine very badly needs. There are other steps he could take to include, there's an international exchange system that Russia needs to be a part of for its economy. The U.S. could kick them out of that. And if they did, that would be a very big deal. So there are tools at the president's disposal. The question is when and if he will use them.
Panel, we'll hold it right there.
I ask you, President Trump and members of Congress, why do we continue to cover up sexual abuse and assault? Who are we covering for?
We know the names. Many of us were abused by them. Now, together as survivors, we will confidentially compile the names we all know.
This is a Democrat hoax that never ends. They're trying to get people to talk about something that's totally irrelevant to the success that we've had as a nation since I've been president.
Epstein accusers rallying up on Capitol Hill. Axios writes it this way: MAGA splinters as Epstein fight returns to Congress. Representatives Thomas Massie, Ro Khanna are seeking to force a House vote mandating the full release of the Justice Department's documents on Epstein. Despite President Trump's insistence on moving on, MAGA has not budged. The coming weeks will test what else, if anything, GOP leadership can do to steer attention off of the most enduring controversy of Trump's presidency so far. Back with the panel. Josh, it does not seem to be going away, and obviously these victims have compelling stories, and they are going to continue to tell them, they say.
No, that was quite a moment on Capitol Hill, hearing the really heartbreaking testimony from the Epstein victims. But this is becoming, or Trump at least is making this a partisan fight. And it's notable that there aren't a whole lot of Republican defectors. We saw Marjorie Taylor Greene speak at the press conference. Obviously, Thomas Massie is behind this bipartisan petition to discharge to try to get the full release of the documents, but there aren't a whole lot of other Republicans that are joining them. And I think at a time when partisan loyalty is really the currency of politics in Washington, I don't think you'll see this measure pass. And I think you may be as likely to see Thomas Massie, who's a target of Trump right now, facing a primary challenge than you will actually see movement. And I know Mike Johnson wants to have an alternative path to actually work through the Oversight Committee to get this handled rather than having a public release of the documents.
Susan?
You know, I disagree with Josh on this. I think while Democrats are delighting that this story keeps going on, the force behind it is voters who align with Trump, or MAGA voters who believe they have been deceived on this, who have refused to accept the explanation of Mike Johnson and Donald Trump and other Republicans that everything is out. And the document dump last night of documents like 97% had been released before is not going to settle this issue. I'm not sure what will. I think this goes on, and I think it continues to draw its fuel, its fire, from MAGA, not from Democrats.
Yeah, and, you know, Brit, it is something, this document dump, a lot of it had been out. There was a lot redacted. There is a call for, you know, full transparency here, with the caveat that you have to protect the victims.
You know, Bret, back during the Russia collusion to-do, I used to say that story had traveled farther on less evidence than any scandal I'd ever seen. This thing is beginning to give it a run for its money. I mean, look, these women tell these terrible stories about awful things that happened. I don't doubt they did. They were terrible. But when they start naming names, and the names aren't the names we've already heard, and when they tell us something about politicians doing something other than simply associating with this guy, Jeffrey Epstein, then I think the story will get some renewed life. But I think it's living now on people's suppositions and conspiracy theories. And the evidence of anybody beside Epstein doing anything terribly wrong here is pretty thin at the moment.
Meantime, there's some rebranding going on, or at least trying to go on Capitol Hill. Take a listen.
So you're talking about the One Big Beautiful Bill. So do we have a name change coming?
Well, the best marketer out there is our president, and he used the name One Big Beautiful Bill to help get it passed, and now to try to explain to the American people, he's suggesting we call it the Working Families Tax Cut, which is exactly what it is. It's a big component of it.
They're squirming. They know this bill is unpopular. So now what do they want to do? Change the name? Changing the name isn't going to open rural hospitals that are closing.
You know, Josh, it is something about, you know, going into the details of a bill, and the One Big Beautiful Bill, White House aides are saying it's just not cutting it when they're talking about it, and these town halls are becoming increasingly upset about it.
Yeah, look, Trump is the master of branding, and calling it the Big Beautiful Bill when it was a complicated reconciliation piece of legislation was the way to get it through Congress, was the way to get every Republican on Trump's side. But it's actually proving to be a problem when it comes to actually selling the public what's actually in this legislation. Look, this is a tax cut and immigration enforcement bill. That's what the White House wants to communicate to voters. But I think Democrats have been more effective in talking about the Medicaid cuts that are also part of the legislation to balance the money out. And look, the midterms are coming closer. Democrats think that they actually can use that argument about cuts to entitlement programs, to Medicaid, as an effective message against Republicans in the big elections.
Susan?
Yeah, you know, it took months of constant repetition for us to all call it One Big Beautiful Bill. So it's going to take a lot of, I think, effort to rebrand this one.
Yeah, Brit?
I don't think the people who gave us the Inflation Reduction Act should be doing any complaining about the improper naming of bills. There is, after all, the preservation of a tax cut in here, so this bill could be named that, I guess, legitimately.
We'll hear a lot about it heading to 26. Panel, thanks so much.
Listen ad-free with a Fox News Podcast Plus subscription on Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Prime members can listen to this show ad-free on the Amazon Music app.